On behalf of Councilman Wizard and myself, we want to welcome you to this very important topic as it relates to Seaside, as it relates to Monterey Peninsula, and in general Monterey County. The homeless situation, the homeless concern is a very large program. This is an opportunity for us to listen more than talk. So this is your show, not necessarily ours. The community leader will provide some information and some background to help you bring forth some of your ideas. I want to give you an overview of the plan, so that way we know what's going on. Also note that there's cookies and water over there. We want to remind you that it is a Valentine thing, so that way you know that we're going to be cooperative, happy, share ideas, and we're all going to be positive and try to find solution rather than complaints. We want you to share your ideas and your concerns, but we want to do it in a community-loving atmosphere. That is the overall goal set forth by Mr. Wizard and myself. The goal will be for the leadership team here to share your thoughts for 30 to 35 minutes, not a piece, but to, as a group. Then we're going to open it up for comments. We'll ask you to line up because we want to get it moving. You'll have 3 minutes, no more than 3 minutes. If you can share your ideas in 2 minutes, that's better for everybody. We are going to cut it off at 7:40, 7:45, so that way the leaders can answer questions. And then hopefully by 8:05, we'll say goodnight, happy Valentine's, and then we'll all go home happy that we've learned something and we've shared something. And again, the focus will be listening to each other, communicating with each other, and being part of a solution rather than a complaint. Okay, so that's the goal. Again, thank you very much for being here. So saying that, we're going to start right away. We're going to introduce Catherine Turney. She's the Executive Officer for the Coalition of Homeless Providers. She has been the Director for the Homeless for the past 5 years. She's a local agency for homeless funding. And we have a nice hand for Mrs. Turner.
Lights are going off? Ah. So can everybody hear me? Because the last thing I need is a mic.
Why don't you use a mic because this is being recorded. Matter of fact, you have to use a mic. Just grab that one right there. And it may not.
Can you hear me?
Yay.
So loud. So I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. And I want to let you know that I have 100 copies of the executive summary of this information here on this desk for you to take home. And if you really want to spend some time with the 100-page report, just go to our website, it's there as well. So before we start, I just want to let you know that this information is gathered and submitted to the government every 2 years. So we're working on our 2017 numbers because we just did our 2019 point in time count last week. And it'll be several months until our final report is done. But let's get started. Next. So a typical homeless census looks at 2 different categories of people. One are called sheltered people who are homeless. Those are people who are on the night of the count living in or residing in an emergency shelter or a transitional housing program. Then you have unsheltered people. Those are people who are living in places not meant for human habitation. In an alleyway, in a car, in a tent, things like that. Excluded persons are people who are doubled or tripled. The census is comprised of a few parts. One is an observation, that's where the count happens. Then we also have a huge survey process. So between the survey and the count, you put them together, and that's when you get your information and your reporting data. Go ahead. So if you look, you will see that in 2017, for Monterey County, our numbers went up to 2837. So in 2017, in the last 10 days of January, which is when you have to do the census, there were 2,837 people who were sheltered or unsheltered for that point in time, that snapshot. And of those people, 26% of those people were residing in an emergency shelter, transitional housing program. 74% were unsheltered, living in places not meant for human habitation. And you'll see on the bottom, 11% in emergency shelters, 15% in transitional, 25% on the street, 7 in buildings, 32 in cars, and 10 in encampments. Go ahead. Now, this is what's called geographic distribution. It's by jurisdiction. So you'll see that we're comparing 2015 to 2017. So if you go down to Seaside, you'll think, oh look, there was a 62% drop in homelessness, right? But you can't count that, really, because it's a point in time. And until we get our 2019 numbers, we're not going to know. In the last few years, there's been a lot of migration in the homeless community, people in one community moving to another community, moving to another community, and we'll see how that fleshes out in 2019 reporting. Go ahead. So for subpopulation data, you'll see chronically homeless people were 605. Those are people who are homeless and have a disability. Veterans, there are 110. Families, there were 160 families comprised of 550 family members. Unaccompanied children, 152. Go ahead. Ages, HUD makes you report ages in a weird way. So under 18, 17%, 18 to 24, 16%, and then 25 and up, that's where your catch-all is, right? We know we'd like to break it down differently, but we're forced to do it this way. Our gender, 61% men, 37% women, 2% transgender. You'll see the sexual orientation and ethnicity to the right. Go ahead. This is a misnomer that I like to break, because a lot of people say, oh, people come to Monterey County from out of the area because it's such a beautiful place. No, the vast majority of our homeless population are from here. They are our neighbors, our moms, our dads, our brothers, our sisters, and our friends. Down at the top, it'll tell you how long people have been homeless here. At the bottom, it'll say what ages they were when they first became homeless. And then you'll see 13% were in the foster care system. Go ahead. Almost done, I swear. When we're talking about employment, I don't know why that's cut off, but 25% of people are employed, the rest are not. Why? Some are unable to work, some are looking. Think of how hard it is to get a job. 25% stop looking, and you'll see what the primary event or conditions and obstacles are. A lot of it's about rent. Rent is high. Go ahead. This tells us about our disabling conditions, mental health, physical health, HIV, drug or alcohol abuse. Go ahead. This tells us what people are accessing, meals, bus passes, things of that nature. And why aren't they accessing government assistance? Some people think they can't access, some people don't have an ID, and other reasons. Go ahead. And there you go. See how fast? So I'm going to ask you to hold your questions, as Councilmember Pacheco said. Here's the executive summary, and I'll answer your questions when it's time.
Thank you. Now that we know what the problem is, I want to introduce some people that are going to be part of the solution. Sherry Hasty, I noticed, was here with Community Partnership for Youth. Wendy Askew with MPUSD. Mrs. Oglesby, Mrs. Mayor's here as well. So I'm sure she's going to report all this positive information. The Seaside Fire Chief is here. The Seaside Police Chief is here. And they're here because they care about the residents of Seaside, because they're part of the community. Robin McRae with Community Human Services is here as well. Jason Campbell, City Councilman, is here. I believe I saw the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District Superintendent is here as well. Mrs. Lusk is here from the school district as well. I believe Elena Miles is here as well, I was told. And let's see here. That's all my notes. I can't. Oh, the mayor, I don't. Mayor of Joey Oaks is here as well. So there's a wide array of solution people here that will help solve this problem and move the project forward. At this time, my partner in putting this on is Mr. John Wizard. Thank you very much, Mr. Wizard. Councilman for the City of Seaside.
Thank you, Councilmember Pacheco. So I'll try to follow in Ms. Turney's footsteps and be very brief, just to let you guys know a little bit about the HEAP funding. And HEAP is the Homeless Emergency Aid Program. It was Senate Bill 850 out of the last legislative session, and it was a $500 million one-time disbursement from the state of California to change the conversation, to do something now, do something today. Here's a chunk of money, make something happen. As you might imagine, in our large state, $500 million only goes so far. And places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, where we know that there are more people who are unsheltered, get more of that money because there are more, there's greater need in those areas. So because of the public policy, there's a thing called a continuum of care. And the continuum of care is, for us, it's Monterey and San Benito counties, because San Benito is a little bit small. We partner with them, and we have some similarities where it makes sense to kind of put us together. And so the continuum of care for our region received $12.5 million from the state of California. It's kind of middle of the road. The way the funding broke down, some of those larger communities got some money off the top of that $500 million, and then they got a second bite at the apple, so to speak, of more proportionately based, how many people who are homeless are in your town compared to, that was just a very down and dirty about the funding. So because we are partnered with San Benito County, they got roughly $2 million, and we're going to get roughly $10.5 million. The Leadership Council, which is a group of nonprofit leaders, elected officials, service providers who oversee the way that money is spent on homeless issues here in our region. They have determined through several meetings and stakeholder outreach and collaboration with those service providers that 65% of our $10.5 million will go to capital projects. So buildings, pipes, drywall, things for to physically offer services, and about 35% will go toward programs and services. So one of the conditions of the HEAP grant was no less than 5% had to be spent on children who are homeless. And so our Leadership Council, and I'm very proud of our Leadership Council, has said that we're going to double that. We're going to do 10% as a minimum of the amount of money that we're going to spend on those children. And so that all works out to be that there's roughly $7 million for capital projects. So if you break down Monterey and San Benito County as part of the continuum of care, and then you break down Monterey County and our 10.5, roughly 10.5, obviously you can't have this conversation without talking about Salinas, and we know that there are a large population of homeless people in Salinas. So while there's no formula, there's no X amount of people here and Y amount of people there, just as a place to start a conversation, roughly 60% or so of the county's population of people who are homeless are in Salinas. According to the 2017 census, and we just participated in the most recent census, which was 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? January 31st, of course. And so those numbers are going to change. But if we use the numbers we have today, roughly 60% of the people that would use or need these services are in Salinas. So you could have a conversation around roughly 60% of the money going to Salinas as kind of a starting point to have that conversation. I'm certain it won't be exactly 60%, but if you're going to talk about it, that's an easy way to start the conversation. So 60% or so of $7 million or so is about $4.2 million. And the rest potentially could be used for some kind of capital project here on the Peninsula. So with $2.8 million or so, there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of possibilities. And so the County of Monterey and the City of Seaside had a conversation about what we could do, what was the realm of possibility. That's pretty much it for HEAP funding, but I just wanted to say, just put in a plug, that I recently visited the Community Foundation. They had a brief workshop, or seminar rather, on student homelessness in Monterey County. And I just wanted to identify that as of 2017, the state of California was aware of 9,000 students who are homeless in Monterey County, which is more than all of the 9 counties making up the greater San Francisco Bay region. We have roughly 30% of our student population is homeless, which is significantly, staggeringly more than in any other county in the San Francisco region. And so I really want to go back to that point about acknowledging the pride that I feel with our leadership council and saying that 5% just wasn't enough. We need to do 10 as a minimum. And at this time, say thank you for listening, and I'll turn it over to City Manager Craig Malin for some information about what's happening here in Seaside.
Just a couple of the people that are part of the solution. I believe I saw Gracie Rubio, the mayor's former mayor. Daryl Chote is the former member of the Seaside City Council. I want to recognize them as well. At this time, we want to introduce Craig Malin. He's the current city manager for the City of Seaside for the past 3 years. He was the prior city manager of the City of Davenport for 14 years. And he's a great leader, and we're going to turn it over to him now.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think I was asked to present some information about where we're at with regard to this issue. And I think the easiest and best and most informative way for me to do that in a formal way is to actually read 2 letters. So I would normally not read 2 letters, but you all have not seen these 2 letters, and I think they provide the context for the discussion moving forward. The first letter is a letter from the Seaside City Council to the County Board of Supervisors, and it follows from this early discussion about can the county and the City of Seaside and other cities work together somehow in order to secure some of this HEAP funding. So the letter's like 5 paragraphs, and I'll try not to put you to sleep as I read it, maybe with some inflection here or there. The City of Seaside has an interest in partnering with Monterey County, other Peninsula cities, and regional nonprofits to contribute to solutions for homeless individuals. The city understands Monterey County has a vacant building of approximately 4,300 square feet at 1292 Broadway, which the county may dedicate to the homeless shelter pursuant to a future agreement with the city, should the city, county, and other partners find agreement on terms related to the renovation of the structure and operation of a shelter within the renovated structure. The parcel on which the building rests is appropriately zoned for emergency shelter, and I'll get back to that in a second. Given the city's present needs, challenges, and resources, the city's ability to move forward with the planning and operation of the shelter at the location is predicated on 2 principal factors, one procedural and the other practical. The first is an opportunity for community input on the potential operation of the shelter at the location. City officials are planning a community input session on the topic next month, and any final commitment to a grant application for renovation of the structure is dependent upon council action which would follow that session. By the way, this is that session. The second practical factor that requires resolution is formulating a coalition of funding partners in building operational capacity. The City of Seaside at present has neither the operational nor budget capacity on its own to fund the operation of a 4,300 square foot homeless shelter. We're more than willing to work with the county, other cities, and nonprofits to share the expenses of doing so within our budgetary framework. To this end, we propose a third operational funding split between the county, Peninsula cities, and a non-profit funding partner. With recognition of the preceding matters to be resolved in advance of any final council decision, should the county be interested in moving forward with a joint HEAP application or other such funding support to alleviate homelessness, Seaside stands ready to assist. So that was the letter that the City Council reviewed at the January 17th City Council meeting and authorized that it be signed and sent to the chairman of the Monterey County Board. Again, that was just sort of setting the stage for a broader discussion, which this meeting is part of. I mentioned The letter mentions that the parcel on which the building rests is appropriately zoned for an emergency shelter. That's the case. Last year, about this time, as the City of Seaside was updating its housing element as we are moving through our update of our general plan, and in reaction to California law, there is established a zoning overlay for emergency shelters, which exist by right. Somebody could go to this general boundary I'm about to describe and operate an emergency shelter. And that general boundary is LaSalle, Pacheco, Sonoma, and Fremont. That's been adopted by the city for almost a year now. And this, in the county's building, is within that zone. So that's something to keep in mind as a discussion occurs about where an emergency shelter might be located in Seaside. Within that district, an emergency shelter can be opened and operated by right. So that was the letter that we sent to the county, and Councilmember Pacheco and the Wizard planned this meeting. And then on Monday, I got a letter that I'll read to everyone. That was from the Community Human Services and Gathering for Women, and it was addressed to the City Council. So they sent it to me at 4:20 or something like that on Monday, and I sent it out to the City Council and said, pursuant to the Brown Act, don't talk about this, by replying to all and all that. So I'm sure they haven't had any discussion about this. And again, this one's 6 paragraphs, and I'll just read this letter because it distills an idea, is how I would frame it. And again, it's from Community Human Services and Gathering for Women to the Seaside City Council. It says, as you may be aware, Monterey County recently received $10 million in homeless emergency aid, HEAP funding, to provide for immediate and direct assistance to those impacted by the homeless crisis in Monterey County. The notice of funding availability was released on February 8th. Applications for this one-time fund are due on April 1st. In response to this opportunity, Community Human Services, in partnership with the Gathering for Women, is planning to establish and operate a homeless shelter on the Monterey Peninsula. The site we have tentatively chosen is the vacant county building on the corner of Broadway Avenue and Notre Dame Street. The same building that we were talking about earlier. The reasons for selecting this site are location, proximity to transportation, proximity to services, low cost lease with the county, and relatively low cost to rehabilitate the facility. We plan to rehabilitate the facility with private donations and apply for HEAP funding for operating expenses for the first 2 years. After that, we plan to conduct an annual campaign to elicit operating funds from Peninsula municipalities and private individuals, businesses, and the community at large. We have discussed establishing a Peninsula Homeless Shelter Fund with the Community Foundation for Monterey County for this purpose. In addition, all the Peninsula cities are members of the Community Human Services Joint Powers Agency, which may help facilitate this process. We also plan to offer case management services to men and families during the day at the shelter site and to women at the Gathering for Women's day facilities on El Dorado Street in Monterey. Case management would address housing, employment, addictions to medical, mental health, and substance abuse services. Other amenities and services would include showers, laundry tokens, mail service, enrollment in mainstream benefits, dinner and breakfast, and after-school activities and academic support for children. We are in discussion with several nonprofits about potentially partnering with us to provide daily transportation to and from the shelter from other Peninsula locations. The benefits of a homeless shelter to the city of Seaside include getting the homeless safely off the streets at night, providing the homeless with access to assistance and services, and using valuable local resources efficiently through a proactive, holistic community approach to homelessness that will ultimately reduce the city's financial burden and improve impacted neighborhoods and businesses. HEAP funding presents a rare, one-time opportunity for our community to address the burgeoning problem of homelessness. It also represents the City of Seaside with a unique opportunity to lead the way for the Peninsula in these efforts. We hope you will support this plan to establish a shelter in Seaside. Again, we got that letter on Monday afternoon. There's been no substantive discussion at the council level about this at all. So nice representatives from the Gathering for Women joined me in my office on Tuesday morning to talk a little bit about logistics. And the logistics are really summarized as we're having this meeting tonight, and then next Thursday at the city council meeting, the topic of potential solutions for homelessness, including applications for HEAP funding and potential locations, will have its first discussion before the city council at the city council meeting. And just looking around the room, I think we have to expand City Hall a little bit because the council chambers might be a little small. So I hope that is a segue from the broader opportunity of HEAP funding to what is happening currently in Seaside. And I'll hand it over to Nick from the county to discuss the county's perspective on the topic.
Just before we introduce Mr. Chulos, it's very important what the city manager just said. Next Thursday, the 21st, I believe it is, the council meeting is at 7 o'clock. We'll be providing hopefully some direction as it relates to this opportunity or idea or concern. That's when the decision, this tonight is a listening session to hear from the residents and the community to get your perspective because we want you to be part of the solution. At this time, I'd like to introduce Nick Chulos. He is the Monterey County Assistant County Administrator. He's responsible for intergovernmental legislative affairs. He's responsible for 9/11 program, the cannabis program, emergencies, services, and is the point person for the county homeless program. Mr. Chulos.
Thank you, Councilmember Pacheco, and thank you, Councilmember Wizard, for inviting me here tonight. I'm joined by a couple of county staff that I'd like to introduce. Carl Holm, who is our Resource Management Agency Director. And Carl has a lot of responsibilities, but the relevant part for tonight is that his department manages all the county facilities, all the county buildings. And Glorietta Rowland from Department of Social Services, who is here as well. And Supervisor Jane Parker is here as well in the audience. Real briefly, because I think between the three previous speakers, a lot has been covered for background. I want to leave plenty of time for your questions. Addressing homeless issues in the county is a top priority for the County Board of Supervisors, and working with the cities and the other providers that can address homeless issues. We're at a really interesting point in time right now because we've got a couple of suitable sites, one in Salinas that we're working on with the city of Salinas, and possibly one here in Seaside, and we have money, which is a huge motivator, frankly. Because it's a major problem. The homeless issue in our county and throughout the state really is a major problem, and it looks like we have the ability to address that. Our discussions with the City of Seaside have really been at a very high level, and there's a lot that if we're going to pursue this further, would really need to be discussed and worked out. Just to give you a little quick background, so Craig talked about the building at Broadway and Noche Buena that the county owns. It was formerly a county health department clinic that's been vacant for about 10 years, I believe. Interestingly, the city zoning ordinance does address homeless shelters or emergency shelters, and I looked at it earlier today, and there's a lot of very specific development criteria that it very thoughtfully addresses how one might develop a homeless shelter at some location. We talked a little about the HEAP funding that we have available. It's a really terrific opportunity. So the background on this and how we got involved with the city of Seaside, in late 2018, we became aware of the fact that the city might be interested in talking to the county about the building that we've been referring to. So we had a meeting toward the end of the year with Chief Dempsey, who is the city manager's point person on homeless issues, and some of the county staff. And that was a very, very preliminary discussion. We were invited in early January to come and speak to the city council about this issue, and we did that. And at that time, we talked about if we were going to proceed with HEAP funding because of the tight time frames involved in that we would need, at some point, some expression of interest from the city, if the city was interested in pursuing this. And that's the letter that Craig was referring to that eventually came out on January 17th. And from the mayor and the city council to our board chair. We had a site visit at the Broadway Noche Buena modular with Craig and with Chief Dempsey around that time as well. So I think the next steps really are, first and foremost, to get community input tonight, which is what we're all here for. The council will be discussing this next Thursday and will be taking up this matter. If the decision is to go forward and to support the idea of a site at Broadway and Noche Buena, then the question of an operator and grant application would come up. And as Craig indicated, the community homeless, I always butcher the name of the organization, I apologize, Community Human Services. They could be an operator, and that might be something that could be supported to go forward. The grant applications are due, I believe, April 1st, and I believe that the decision on the grant applications would be rendered in June of this year. So in our view, this is really the beginning of a discussion. And yes, there are some fairly tight timeframes involved, but there's a lot that still needs to be discussed. If the decision is to move forward with this site, how would the site be operated? Who would be the primary? Would it be primarily a family shelter or single women's shelter? There's a lot of issues to be worked out. Operational parameters are important. We've found in all the things that we've looked at that the site for a shelter is important, but how it's operated is of fundamental importance. That's really the primary objective to making a shelter that will really work. So with that, I'm going to stop. We'd be glad at some point tonight to answer questions that you might have. And as I said, we've got a couple of the county staff here if there are questions that they can answer better than I can. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Give a nice hand for all our speakers. Thank you very much. We want to remind you we're here together. Everybody has a different opinion. The goal is to listen to each other. The staff will be here to listen. Councilman Wizard and myself are here to listen. That is our objective, is to listen. This is the plan, and I want to remind you of the plan. The plan is you have a 3-minute window of opportunity. You can take less, and that would be good, which allows potentially more speakers. We finish the discussion in approximately 7 minutes, which is good. The goal is to finish community comments by 7:40, 7:45, return it back to the dais or the people of wisdom here, and they will answer some questions, and then we'll go say goodnight and invite you to come to February. Please remember, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. Treat each other with respect and dignity. It is okay to disagree. That is fine. And if you have solutions or ideas other than the homeless shelter to add beyond that, that is a positive thing. So, at this time, we're not going to do like we do at a council meeting. We are going to ask you to line up. Once we see the line stop, it's over. So if you're going to, because then we're going to assume that no one has anything to say. Okay, so I would suggest you line up now so that way we can move this forward. The more people will get lined up ready to go, the more people can speak. Because the goal will be to finish this part by 7:40, 7:45. And we're going to do it with dignity, class, and respect of each other. Okay? The line is over here with Mr. DeBerry, a former NPUSD superintendent. Is there a secret behind this?
Hello. That's it. Thank you very much for this opportunity. But it's sad for me to hear what I've heard tonight. I heard 3 letters read by a city manager that talked about things that the citizenry of Seaside was not aware of. And it would be good for me to get copies of those letters if I may. From what I'm hearing, this seems to be a done deal with the way things are headed. I live on this peninsula for 50 years in this town. Not only did I live here, I worked here. I worked throughout this peninsula. We had a place in Seaside that we did not like. It was the pit. and it's exactly where you're planning on putting this shelter. We worked really hard to get that removed from the seaside because it was an eyesore. There's plenty places in this county or in this area where we could put this without going back to that same place. I was coming tonight to ask if the deal was done, and I believe the deal is done. So I think I have an answer to that. I'm really upset because I've heard things that I didn't know. And I keep up with what's happening in our city. Those letters were very informative, and it breaks my heart to know that we've been treated as citizens in this town that way.
Thank you.
I agree with everything he said. The pit, the guys want to take a building that years ago, that area was called the pit, and you could buy anything you wanted from there. Same thing with Lower Broadway. So now we finally get the town built up. There was nothing up there before. Now you want to take and destroy it. There's a lot of apartments and housing and people, school kids going to school, and you want to put a homeless shelter right there. And it's not really fair. Why don't you use some of the barracks out in Fort Ord? Fix them up. You know, this is, you want to take the town, and you already okayed, this is the drug capital of the Peninsula. That drug is cannabis now. It can buy five different stores or whatever, you know. That wasn't right either. I agree with that fellow. It sounds like this is a done deal, and a lot of us are not going to be happy.
Hi, it's great that you're considering a shelter, but I've been almost homeless a couple of times because I can't afford to pay the rents. This is a big, big issue. I wish somebody would do something to control these rent costs. They keep increasing, $300 a month, you know, whatever they want to do. It's not fair. And if you consider a shelter, please consider the homeless pets, animals. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Thomas, and I grew up here in Seaside. I have to give you some history about myself. I have spent the last 40 years of my life managing low-income housing and dealing with homeless people. I'd say that in my 40 years of my career, which I recently retired, I personally have housed thousands of homeless people. So I say that because I don't have time to tell you the horror stories of what I've been through. Throughout the country, I've managed these type of housing in all 4 regions of this country. With regard to Seaside, Seaside is my home. I love my home. I grew up in the 1600 block, which was like fantasy for people here. When I grew up here, that corner that you're talking about was a Beacon gas station before the pit. Then it became the pit. What I don't understand, I have no objection to homeless because that's been my life, housing homeless. But what I don't understand is the location you chose. And then again, what I don't understand is who made the decision to make those streets that you named the area that is for homeless. Seaside has owned more property, especially Fort Ord, and had buildings that have turned into just trash that you could have rehabbed and put someone in. The building on Noche Buena can be picked up and taken somewhere. You have enough property to go elsewhere. This is our neighborhood, these are our homes, and we should not be subjected to the horror stories that I can tell you that will happen with putting a homeless shelter on Noche Buena. We have 2 churches there. We have our community mortuary there. We have children right up the street and down the street. And I can tell you, you cannot mix the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one second. I just want to make this perfectly clear. The city's decision, the direction, will be decided on the 21st. There is no decision. There is no direction. There is no pretty much anything. We are listening to you. There have been proposals made. That's the end of the story. The 21st is the day there'll be a direction. The goal of this meeting is to listen so we can present your perspective. I just want to be really clear. No decision has been made at all. And thank you. I didn't want to interrupt. I want to make sure you know no decision has been made. Thank you.
My turn? Well, my name is Wanda Sue Parrott. I write a column called Homeless in Paradise, and it's gone on for almost 5 years. And if I just want to clarify that I understand that that site is county property in the middle of the city. You don't have to answer it now, but if you would at some point. And that you mentioned the gathering for women working with someone else, one of the other agencies. If the homeless shelter goes through, and it's a homeless shelter for general homeless, will the gathering for women still be involved? Or might it become a homeless shelter for women only, and they subdivide inside into little, like cells, little miniature rooms. So 30 or 40 women would have private space, but a communal area. I think it would be wonderful. It's very much needed. Thank you.
My name is John. I am a 9-year resident of Seaside, and I have to thank Council members Pacheco and Wizard for inviting us all here. I'm thrilled to see this number of people. I hope that we can all appreciate the magnitude and the heartbreak associated with Seaside. I live within a half mile of the proposed site. I'm thrilled to see a modest step toward addressing a huge problem. So I'm in favor. I believe that the council will handle the matter responsibly and responsibly. I'm still a little bit unclear about the long-term sustainability of what should be a years-long commitment. Thank you.
My name is Gabe. I'm a student at the Oldemeyer Institute, and I wanted to know if this shelter is going to be intended as just a shelter, an overnight place to stay, or if it's going to be providing transitional services such as employment counseling and preparation for stability in employment. Because research I've been doing has shown that studies kind of overwhelmingly indicate that employment is key to moving out of homelessness. So I want to know if this is a Band-Aid or if this is something to affect the larger issue.
Dennis Volk, Seaside business owner and resident. When I first heard about this homeless shelter proposal and this meeting, it was the town hall meeting for the citizens of Seaside. And then in the paper the other day, it grew to inviting everybody on the peninsula. So I'm certainly happy that they're here, but I think in years that we've been in Seaside and people have dealt with Seaside issues, Seaside has always had too much outside interest come in and try to put what they want or what they think is best for Seaside. So I hope at this point you're taking the citizens of Seaside comments oath above all other peninsula residents. The shelter, I think, would be, a perfect thing. At the location, I think it's a little bit off base. There are businesses now on Fremont Street that have a problem with the homeless population. I haven't seen the citizen or the council or anybody really address the problem that we have now. And to hear people say, well, we gotta hurry and get this money because it's out there and it's available and we have deadlines to get it, is not really what I think we should be doing. I think we should ask the police chief, talk to the fire chief, find out, you know, what this is gonna cost us on the long term, and not just try to get $2 million for a $20 million project. So I think that needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you. Just very briefly, and fortunately Mr. Wizard and myself know most of you that are speaking, but if you can say your name and if you're from Seaside or Monterey or Carmel, or if you're a social service provider, that would be helpful as well.
My name is Lois Thomas. I'm a business associate here in Seaside. I've been here some 40 years and I've seen a lot of improvements in Seaside. And most recently we saw some number I heard was around $7 million of taxpayer money spent in dressing up Broadway, which was very much needed. And now we want to bring in a blight, echoing Mr. DeBerry and Mr. Avila. That pit was there. Everything Lounge was across from there. It was a nightmare. And we're just bringing back the same thing. So what are we doing? Sticking in AI for $7 million? It's going to be destroyed what gains we have gathered.
My name is Sandra Weaver. I'm also a 40-some-year resident of Seaside. In fact, I used to work in the social services building at that site. I am very proud to see Seaside leading the way. And thank you to the council members for convening this town hall. I think it's frankly quite shameful when people come out of the woodwork and try to call homeless population a blight. I think we should move forward, but as was mentioned, the operational details are very, very critical. For example, is this just an overnight shelter being proposed? What happens to the population during the day will really impact the neighborhood, and so that's very important. And the other concern I have about the location is that the parking lot is always really full at that location with employees and clients of the social services building, except on weekends. So that would need to be addressed. But again, I'm proud for Seaside to lead the way. And the organizations that have been mentioned, Community Human Services, particularly, and the Leadership Council, are very reputable entities, and I think we should have confidence that we would have input into that process along the way. Thank you.
Daryl Shote, 56 years, Seaside. And let me say this clear, because the name always seemed to make people think. I am not against the homeless, but there's a place and time. All money is not good money. And if that's you guys' purpose, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. The location is the worst thing. Now we had a Facebook, internet talking, 135 people I checked have weighed in on this. And Mr. Pacheco, I'm gonna tell you point blank, you lied to us, because this sounds like a done deal. And Mr. Wizard's on the board to it too. There's no way this should have passed anybody. And then now I read on this, you read a letter to us saying on the 17th we sent a letter to the county. So it sounds like you guys already have this idea. But this takes us personally. I remember the days I couldn't walk down Broadway because they're finding dead bodies everywhere. I remember the days I couldn't go down Broadway because there's always some shooting or something going on. We put all that money on Lower Broadway for an economic engine, and where do you think they're gonna go? They're not gonna go 15 miles away after they had whatever in that facility. They're gonna go stay down Lower Broadway. Well, let me tell you what happened and what really got me pissed off. An investment group that I brought to this city was looking at 3 facilities or buildings on Lower Broadway to do something to help our economic development. And today I get a call, they backed out. Because of this issue. This makes no sense that the whole city's gonna have to suffer, and all, especially those residents around it. They're gonna suffer. If you haven't lived here, the city manager ain't been here long enough, Mr. Wizard ain't been here long enough, Dave, you've been in our recreation department, but you weren't involved. But I'm telling you, I've got history in this city. I sat on that council for 16 years. This is the wrong location. Now, I went by Marina's government area. Perfect. Transportation's great. A lot of land you can build on. It's more better than our site. Our site is tiny. Why didn't we choose Marina? Why are we always trying to be the hero to the peninsula when we don't have to be? We need our economic development engine going. That whole Broadway corridor is supposed to be an economic engine. Now, you want to take it down. Well, you know what? I'm going to say this. When it happens, it's a black eye on both of you. And it sounds like we only need one more vote. I'm pretty sure they got it on the board because that letter said a lot. I don't remember it being announced at the council meeting to send the letter. So apparently somebody had enough strength to make the city manager send the letter. And now this is where we're at. And we were told we were going to be able to say no. It don't sound like we're going to have that choice tonight. It sounds like it's a done deal.
Just a reminder, and thank you, Mr. Schultz, this is not a done deal.
Yeah, right.
That's why it takes 5 people on February 21st.
It takes 3.
To make a decision for the city, and it takes 3 correct. And I'm sure Mr. Wizard nor I have made any decisions. That's why we wanted to hear your views, so help us make our decisions. That's why it's called a listening session. If we had decided, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. Yes, young lady.
My name is Taylor Blair, and I live in Marina. I just want to ask, how do you know the homeless, like, they themselves will, like, be okay with this? Because some of them, not all of them, are kind. Some of them might actually be happy there. And also, I want to ask you, why, have you asked any of the homeless about this issue? Like, have you, like, interviewed them or anything?
Thank you so very much for speaking up. You spoke very well, and so very much proud of you to say a few words. Thank you.
Reyes Bonilla, Community Homeless Solutions Executive Director. I like to provide 6 years of experience at the Salinas Warming Shelter. So we, as Community Homeless Solutions, have provided what some entities have, expressed interest in running the shelter. Let me mention 2 very important things for those who are going to apply for HEAP funding. We have years of experience providing shelter, transitional housing to the homeless and to survivors of domestic violence. And there's some important things, that were mentioned as part of services, but there were some that were not mentioned in the letters that were read to everybody. And this is also to put comfort into some of the comments that were made today. So we had 107 calls to dispatchers in the city of Salinas regarding the homeless that we provide services to. And 70 to 75% of those calls were health related. The others were issues that we had with some of the individuals in there. But we take security measures, safety measures, when individuals come into the shelters so that staff is comfortable, the families or individuals that are in the shelter are comfortable, and that the business community is comfortable. But I can say one big thing in the last 6 years that I've seen the huge difference in the impact that has had on the city. When families or individuals, in this case homeless, are in that building, there's a big difference because activity is not taking place on the streets. So for the citizens of Seaside, for the people who are going to decide, and the leadership council who's going to decide who's going to be out there doing or operating the shelter wherever it may be, because as has been mentioned, there's been talks at this site, or it could be some other site, but it's going to happen somewhere. It has to happen because services have to be provided. It's not easy providing services on the streets when people are parked in all the businesses or around your community, and they're homeless. It's better to have them in there because then you can provide the services and critical services that they would need. Going back to the calls in City of Salinas, I can guarantee you that the comfort level, and there was a lot of opposition from the business community, from even politicians, from the public officials, and local communities. But we have reduced a lot of the concerns of community. We, as Community Homeless Solutions, we'll submit our application proposing that we want to provide services for the Monterey Peninsula. We've been doing it for so many years. We believe 40 years of experience doing this, makes us a good candidate. And so it's not easy trying to satisfy everybody, but if we don't have a location, we'll continue to see the same issues that you'll see. Crime activity, drug activity, you name it, homeless activity, all the things that people complain about seeing the homeless on the street. So we as an agency spoke today about these things, and so we're so interested in not only satisfying the issue of homelessness, but also making the citizens of Seaside comfortable. Thank you.
My name is Dave Lessakar, resident of Seaside for 6 years. And I think it seems that I don't know where any homeless shelter should be, but it seems like a critical issue is how is the homeless shelter operated, as was mentioned by the gentleman from the county, as was mentioned by the gentleman who spoke just before me, and as was alluded to by the young lady who spoke just before that. It's a diverse population. Some need drug rehabilitation therapy. Others need some education so they can get a job. But what I've read in articles that have been published by public interest research groups in the recent past have indicated the biggest factor in homelessness is a high cost of rent compared with a low level of income. So I think one of the things that a homeless shelter can focus on is providing some longer term housing and also provide whatever each client needs on an individual basis in order to either decrease their dependency or increase their earnings. And in terms of the pit and all of the drug dealing that goes on, or has the potential to go on in the vicinity of a homeless shelter, I would suggest that each person who comes into a shelter like that needs to sign a contract that they're not there just for a place to crash. They're there to work with counselors and nurses to improve their situation, and that no drugs, and then maybe in addition to that, having an officer on the beat, right on the block, is a good thing.
Thank you.
My name is Kelly King, and I am the advocate for all senior women without adequate housing. They have grown enormously to better themselves thanks to the Gathering for Women, and we have fed them at different churches and given them clothing, and now we have our own building, and we have made a kitchen and put in showers, and we have fixed over 1,000 meals, and we have only been there a few months. What we need, after they're through eating, taking a shower, maybe playing bingo, or taking exercise, we try everything, and they're so happy to be off the street. Their problem is their Social Security isn't enough to pay the high rent. So So I'm coming to plead for money. We take donations all the time, which has helped us enormously. And we're very happy, and they're happy. And they look at each other before they have to leave at 4 o'clock. And it's like, what do we do now? Where do we go? And I have the owners of one of the restaurants, Rosine's, came and asked me to come in, and I had lunch, and they said, we just want to thank you for the restaurant for getting all those women off the street and putting them in your building and feeding them so as they didn't clutter, because men were complaining about their business because poor women were dragging all their stuff with them, and they're not doing that anymore. But they really need to be inside. They're all over 60. Most of them are all over 60. We get letters every day thanking us, and I would really just bless you to pieces if you could give us some money to get them housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wizard and Councilmember Pacheco, for hosting us. I'm Kate Daniels, and I am the Interim Executive Director of the organization that the previous speaker just spoke about, Gathering for Women. And I want to reiterate something that is really critical to me and really important that Gathering for Women and Community Human Services say tonight, which is we are here to listen. There has been a unique opportunity presented by this funding, coupled with the proposal that a county building may be offered at, and an opportunity may be presented that could allow for a shelter. But we at Gathering for Women and at Community Human Services intend to move forward with the full support of wherever this location is ultimately. I am very familiar with the fact that in Seaside, what is good for the city has been dictated by outside interests for far too long, and that's not okay. That is wrong. I am also very curious about the zoning overlay question that was brought up before and would like to know more about that myself as well. But right now I'm here as the Interim Executive Director of Gathering for Women, and I want to make sure people know that this is not a done deal. All that our organization did was sent a letter because we have such a need, and we have been so successful in the City of Monterey providing this location for women to be during the day, to get the services and the case management that they need. We're giving people hope from a space of despair to improve their lives and to get where they need to go. And one thing we cannot provide is housing. So we fully intend working with Community Human Services to see how we can use this financial opportunity that is presented to us to cover the needs of the population on the Monterey Peninsula. So that's what we are here for. And I just again want to reiterate that we are listening to you. I have no intention of being part of a long-standing problem of outside interests dictating what happens in communities outside our homes. So I look forward to this process. I look forward to communicating more with the city, and I will be at the meeting next Thursday. And I just really thank you for this opportunity to hear from so many residents about your concerns and the issues you see with this idea.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I too would like to thank you both for convening this meeting. I think it's very important that we're all here tonight to share our ideas and listen to each other. So it strikes me that I should say the faces of the homeless have changed over the years. Being homeless is not synonymous with being a drug addict or having a mental illness. There are a lot of homeless families on the peninsula. And in Salinas, I visited a shelter last week, and there were several families with 5, 6, 7 children. We know that there are single parent households, men with children and women with children, and also women, older women and older men who just do not have the resources to pay for rent. A lot of people who are homeless now were one paycheck away from becoming homeless, and something happened in their lives. So I want to stress also what Kate said. This is far from a done deal from our perspective. And if our letter contributed to that perception whatsoever, I want to tell you that it's a reflection of our political inexperience in how to bring this idea out into the open for a broader discussion, which is what we intended to do by sending the letter to the council in the first place. So through our idea to operate the shelter, if that comes to fruition, it would relieve the city and the council or the county from having to consider operating a shelter which is out of their wheelhouse, and would put it into our wheelhouse. We have 50 plus years of experience running various types of housing programs, offering supportive services that would be needed for a shelter, like mental health services, addiction services, housing navigation, connections to healthcare, connections to employment and education. Let's see, a couple of little things. We have consulted with an architect who feels that he has some creative design ideas that for building and landscape that could mitigate some of the concerns the neighborhood might have. But most important, we're willing to meet with residents to hear their concerns and to brainstorm with them to see if there are ways that we can mitigate some of their concerns. So again, I hope Seaside will continue to lead the way as it has in the past on many issues and do something about the burgeoning problem of homelessness. It's not going away, it's growing, and we have a very unique opportunity right here, right now.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Gaines Lynch, and as she said, something happened that took me into a homeless situation that I spent a good 25 years of my life living homelessly. So to hear about a shelter coming to Seaside, I'm ecstatic because when I was out there homeless, I needed a foundation to build upon. And there was nothing, Dorothy's Kitchen, where you had to walk in and out of the drug environment. But today, they want to build something that would really help the homeless women and men in this community and other communities. I'm not saying that it should be on Broadway, but I'm saying it should be somewhere. It should be somewhere. Homeless need a foundation to build on. And if they don't have a foundation, what are they going to do? They're still on the sidewalk. So when I hear people say, F the homeless, all they do is beg, that really hurts me. I was the first coordinator of HEAP for women. Not one time did I see the women that we service from church to church in this community have their buggies, bags, whatever, sitting in front, outside. It was well kept. A well-manned, structured program can be a success. So, just open your minds to the homeless.
Anne-Marie Pagan, 50-plus year resident of Seaside. I remember the pit. I was young, but I remember. I wasn't allowed to even go by there. I couldn't even go on the other side of Broadway because the rumors we were told, because of the shootings, because when Fort Order was here, we had hookers there. And I'm really happy that Seaside has come a long way. We are gaining progress. I feel sorry for the homeless. I'm lucky I have a roof over my head and my children have a roof over their heads. That's not the problem. I'm a compassionate person and I do feel sorry for them. But we need to let them know, Seaside's not the place to come. The Monterey Peninsula is not the place to come. It's so expensive to live here. There were times that I was a paycheck away of being homeless. But I had to take 2 jobs to make sure I wasn't. So a lot of people come to this area because they say it's beautiful and whatever, but they need to realize it's a very expensive area to live in. So don't come here expecting us to give you housing. Mr. Pacheco, I'm really disappointed because you've lied to me once before. And I'm feeling right now that I'm getting it again. Mr. Wizard, I'm not sure. The jury's still out on you. But as the previous speakers have said, it sounds like it's a done deal. Mr. Malin, you didn't read that letter that you were going to give to the county saying that you expressed the interest of Seaside being partners in this. I was at that meeting when they made their pitch. But why has it always got to be Seaside? Pick that building up. If the county owns it, we should have been charging them rent for leaving it there empty for 10 years. It has made nothing for us, for the city. So you can pick that building. It is a modular building. Pick it up, move it over to Marina, Monterey, Fort Ord, Salinas, Carmel, PG. They have plenty of properties that you can move that to. Why has it always got to be Seaside? And I figured this out the other day. We don't have a strong enough council to say no. We're almost being bullied by the county. And we allowed this to happen. It's not the first time that something's happened in Seaside that we've taken direction from an outside agency. So I would just say it is a done deal. And we need to open up our eyes and realize that. And remember, the election is only 2 years away.
My name is Jack Murphy. I am a resident of the City of Monterey. I work in Marina. I've only been here in the state of California for 2.5 years. Prior to that, I served for over 21 years in the Army. I believe, in my current job as the Deputy Director of the Veterans Transition Center, where we serve homeless veterans from the region, from the nation, from anywhere that person comes from, they're going to get served. At the Veterans Transition Center, we've been doing this now for, come June, will be 21 years. 21 years. Homeless are people. They're just like any one of us. No 6-year-old kid stood at the top of the playground and said, "Daddy, when I grow up, I'm going to be a homeless addict." Folks, homeless are people. They're in my community. They're in your community. I've been involved in this HEAP gig since the beginning because I have an interest in it. The Veterans Transition Center is going to make a number of proposals. One of them for a shelter in the basement of Martinez Hall. Hey, that's great. It's not in Seaside. Guess what? It's in Marina, and I'm going to get the same pushback that you folks are giving them from Marina. It's going to be really expensive. It's not optimal. This is a hard problem set to solve. If it was easy, it would have been done decades ago. But this is hard. There is no good solution. Please, and I'm talking to you guys, not them. Please take my word. I've been there from the beginning with this. This is not some fly-by-night, we're trying to hide something from you. This popped on our radar in November. We have to have a solution on April 1st. Fort Ord, completely off the table. Every square inch of Fort Ord has been spoken for. You want bureaucracy? Try to get something done in Fort Ord, okay? There are no great solutions. There are no great solutions. The ones that have been discussed today, there are a couple. You do have another choice, which is to do absolutely nothing about the problem that exists. We're not bringing you a problem by having a shelter on Broadway. The problem's already out there. They're not going to have black eyes.
Thank you,
All
sir.
of you guys are going to have black eyes if you don't do something about it.
Thank you very much.
Annalisa Mitchell. I have to always say I'm a part of the third generation family to Seaside. So I definitely have a vested interest. And I worked at the Veterans Transition Center as a clinical supervisor for 4 years. So they are doing a good thing with the veterans because it's a sad indictment on the country that to even say that there's a homeless veteran. That's an indictment on any country. So let me make this clear. Nobody that came to this mic is putting down the homeless. We all cry We all clench, we all pray, we all encourage, we all give blankets, we give jackets, we try to refer them to wherever a church is that may have a warming shelter. We all do that. And we all encourage and say, hey, you haven't seen your best days yet. Stay encouraged, and we try to guide them to that. But I need to hone in on what Mr. DeBerry said, because it sounds like it's a done deal. And then I need to go back to what you said, Mr. Pacheco, how you framed this meeting. You framed it. So I have a therapeutic background, so I appreciate stuff being framed. So you said that in all things, do it decently and in order, and treat each other with dignity and respect. And you put that off on tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So tonight, treat each other with dignity and respect and love on one another. And I appreciate the 2 council people that had this meeting. However, you keep saying it's not a done deal. It's not a done deal. You keep saying that. But that council meeting that we were at, when that person was chosen with only 8 months experience, you said it wasn't a done deal. You listened to the voice of the people. Now there's over 50 people that spoke. Now if only 10 get up at the council meeting, it's by the method by which you do it, because that was already staged. And a blind man can see that that was staged. Regardless of what you say, it was already staged, and we have to agree to disagree. No shade against the person. It was the method by which you did it. So if the multitude of the people, this room accommodates the multitude, and only 10 of us are at the council meeting, and you heard the multitude say no, please follow the indictment of the community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Margaret Sedena-Benetti. I live in Salinas. And so we're having the same situation and having to decide on where to put a homeless shelter. I see you having a meeting here, and you know, when I walked in, a long line, and I think that's great that people in this community get an opportunity to stand up and voice their opinion. I'll tell you, living in Salinas, we didn't get that opportunity. Our city council made a decision, and in a council meeting said that they were told by the county, pick first, deal with the people later. They actually said that at our meeting. And so now we're all up in arms over there because nobody consulted us. We didn't have an opportunity to say how we felt in any way, shape, or form. And so I feel that I have to come here, go to Monterey, go to all these meetings just to be heard because my city is shutting our voice down. It shouldn't be that way. For the record, transparency, #1, and when you make a decision and you send a letter, memorandum of understanding with your county, to me, that's step 1. You don't get to step 2 without taking step 1. Step 1 is taken by your city council members, just like it was taken by ours. And ours continually say, oh, no, it's not a done deal, that's nothing, it takes 11 people. Forget the wizard behind the curtain over there who took the first vote without even consulting you. In Salinas, they've been bulldozing homeless. And because they've been bulldozing homeless out of the south side, we on the east side, and I live in Creek Bridge, I've been called an NIMBY, even by people in this room. I'm not an NIMBY. I would never have moved next to 2 county jails if I was a NIMBY. And nobody here can say they live next to 2 county jails unless you live where I live. So we're not NIMBYs. And there's farm workers in that community as well. And so what I see is in Salinas is bulldozing. People scattering everywhere. They're going into our pristine river, which is now being, it's been designated as a protected area. We've got the veterans over there. We have soccer fields being built. We have tried to make this into a vibrant community because on the east side, there aren't enough parks. There isn't enough for children to do. And so as we try to build these into it, from a former redevelopment area that it was designated blight. I heard somebody say the word blight. Well, it's actually on paper. That is a blighted area. And now they look to give us 2 shelters when we've already got 2 jails. So yeah, sometimes people are going to get pretty mad when they feel that others are not taking their share. And I hear that kind of coming out of here at Seaside too, saying, what about other people taking their share? I say the same thing, because Carmel hasn't asked for money, Monterey hasn't asked for money, PG hasn't asked for money, Corridor 68 hasn't asked for money, Pebble Beach hasn't asked for money, but they have homeless as well. You know this. And to the woman who was saying, stick it in Salinas, I'm not going to tell you, stick it here. I'm just going to say that we need to be heard. Okay, no, thank you very much, Pacheco. I do want to, I do want to thank you guys for this open forum. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I first want to thank you for this opportunity for all of us to be here and to weigh in and on our opinions. My name is Ava Schofield. I'm a speech pathologist in the schools in Salinas, formerly in Monterey, where I will be returning. A lot of my students are homeless. They didn't ask to be homeless. They're not drug addicts. They don't do crack or anything else. They're kids. And their families are hardworking families. So I also want to say that any one of us in this room could end up homeless. Every single person in this room could end up homeless, no matter how well secure you think that you are. I moved from the Bay Area. I've lived in Seaside for 5 years, on the Peninsula for 7. In the time that I've lived here, I've seen people who had jobs, hardworking people, 50-fold now, go visit on the streets in the 7 years that I've lived down here. So that's the first thing that I want to say. I'm not going to weigh in on the location. I live fairly close to it. I'm not concerned about the location. I am going to weigh in and say I hear, to me, from my experience listening, that most the people I've heard speak are not happy about the location. So I do hope that that is taken into consideration over my personal lack of fear over the location. And speaking of fear, that is what I feel like I'm hearing a lot of. And so speaking to that, I am going to mention that I am indirectly associated, very indirectly, with a shelter that is very successful in South Africa. And part of why that shelter is successful is because of the operation, which you're talking about. And part of what is included in our operation, which I'd like to plant a seed about wherever the shelter is put, has to do with not just helping people that are there find jobs. Let's help you find a job. But skills, training and skills. So in that shelter in South Africa, people are taught how to do woodworking, beautiful woodworking. So I'm picturing where perhaps, wherever the shelter is put, the City of Seaside, which I would love if they lead the way, perhaps a different location, could partner with businesses, with auto dealerships, auto mechanics, woodworking places, whatever the various businesses are, maybe create some kind of incentives so people at the shelters can go through a training program. So that's mostly what I want to say, is plant a seed, and also that hope that we can be less afraid of people that are homeless, because they are us too, conceivably, and they have been some of us in this room. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We need to keep on going. We have about 15 to 17 more minutes left of this phase of it. So I encourage you to say what you need to say, and let's expedite the process a little bit.
Hi, I'm Shonda LaBeouf. I lived in Seaside for about 35 years prior. I was an Army brat on Fort Ord for 17 years. I just wanted to piggyback on what the lady before me said about don't be afraid of the homeless. I mean, we've had a lively discussion on my Seaside posse about the location and the NIMBY problem that people have with the location. And Seaside needs to just realize that we have a real opportunity to help these people, because they're our brothers and sisters, and they could be conceivably us, because a lot of us are living one paycheck away from homelessness, conceivably. And there are more people every year, every month, that are homeless. We can see them on our streets, and they're younger, and they're our parents' age, at least my parents, my dad, and it's frightening, and they're my age, and it's frightening, and they're with their pets, they're with their belongings, they're living in the car, and we have an opportunity. If it's the location, we can do something about that, but like Fort Ord is, like the gentleman said, it's out of the question. The location, to me, it provides access. It's the transportation, bus lines, it's just accessible. And the partnership with the businesses to provide job training with the different businesses in Seaside. They need life skills, job skills, and so I'm just hoping that we can get over our fear. And I think that's what I'm hearing a lot, is the fear of the homeless in our city, and we shouldn't. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. We have about 7 more speakers, so let's keep it going.
I'm Melissa Newland, and I've lived in Seaside for 36 years. Lived here when I was a kid. Came back, stayed a long time, own a home. My concern is that as much as I respect the work that the community human services does, I wanted to hear more from the other people who are already providing help to the homeless. So I was very glad to see the veterans, transition people, but I didn't hear anybody here from iHelp or Salvation Army or the teen shelter from Monterey, people who are providing food, mental health, social service agencies, local churches, Catholic charities. Those are the people who've been out there, you know, doing the work. This isn't, you know, their first thing. And now we have to make a decision in a week. I don't want to lose money that we can use, but I want us to have a realistic, small, but maybe, possibly, well done 2 years with a lot of energy taken into making it happen on a longer term, and not something that gets, you know, looks good and shiny, but doesn't have legs to walk on, because we don't need one more of those. We've seen too much of it. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman in the blue will be the last speaker. Remember, try to expedite this 2 to 2.5 minutes, so that way we can finish in a timely fashion.
My name is Joaquin Livingston, and I've been here in Seaside, grew up here over 40 years. And I've driven the men and women for iHelp. So I drove iHelp for years. Driving from different churches back to the lake, or drive them back to the churches. And once they leave the church in the morning or back at night, they're back out there. So we do need a place that they can be, and not just back and forth. Also, there's no reason why we can't have 2 locations. I grew up in the area which we're talking about. I'm not going to speak on it, but I've seen many friends die, many friends on drugs in that area. I'm not going to get into that. But we can use 2 locations. We have to get our children. We have to get our children off the streets. That's for a fact. We have to get our children out. And like some people said, by the grace of God, it could be us, it could be me. There's some people, including myself, the homeless is nothing to be afraid of. I go out there every week, walk and touch homeless people every single week. With blankets, with food. Some of the people want to be out there because of animals, so we have to consider if we can let animals. Some of the people want to be out there because they want to still do what they're doing. So we need to find different locations for people who can bring animals, people that can bring families, people that, also I work in the medical field, as you can see. We need to get medical attention to these people too. They're people, we need to love them. They're just like us, and they're part of our community.
Thank you. We have about 12 minutes left, so let's keep it moving.
Good evening, my name is Eric Peterson. I'm not from Seaside, I'm from Salinas, not the same neighborhood as Margaret. My introduction to homelessness was the year I lived in my car. I didn't realize I was homeless. I had a home. It had 4 wheels and doors and a roof, and if I didn't like the neighbors, it was easy to move. But by definition, it was an interesting experience. A friend of mine named Joanne. She spent over 15 years on Soledad Street in a tent, rain and all. She got some help, she got into rehab, and she wound up full-time helper for a disabled veteran. I like people who help disabled veterans. And, you know, that's what she really wanted to do. She didn't like it, a drug addict and homeless and all that. And it didn't take a whole lot of help. She did most of it herself. We've got quite a community of homeless folks in Salinas, and getting to know them can be really good. There's one guy who's always got his nose in crossword puzzle books. There's a wide variety. These are good people. They just need help, something went wrong. My situation, when I lived in my car, I didn't have enough money. Things changed, I moved out of my car. Patty's son, Connor, a little different. Paranoid, schizophrenic, alcoholic, homeless. He needs some help. And hopefully, somehow, we'll get some from Monterey County someday. But talk to somebody. You know, there's a lot of folks around that, you know, these are, as I say, these are good people. Something went wrong. My friend Joanne's case, it started with being in an abusive relationship. So she wound up, her next door neighbor said he could make her feel better, and she wound up a dope addict. But as I say, she fixed that. And I don't, as I say, I don't live in the same neighborhood as Margaret. I live half a block from Northgate Park. If a homeless facility went into Northgate Park, I'd welcome it, because there's a lot of good people there. David, John, thank you for this meeting.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Griffin Burns. I am a resident of Seaside since 1994. I'm also recently left employment with the International School of Monterey after 18 years. So my lens that I'm now looking at homelessness has to do with families and children. And since I've been fortunate to take a little bit of a hiatus before throwing myself into my next chapter of something I feel passionate about, and that's affordable housing and homelessness. And I'm going to cite some statistics from a report that I read recently with Pivot Learning, that we've got in 12 schools through Monterey County, you've got 20% of the students in those schools are homeless. You've got 1 in 10 students in the county that are homeless. Those are dire statistics. So that which we fear, we oftentimes want to turn the other way and say, not in my neighborhood. We are no longer in a position with regard to homelessness in Monterey County where we can turn the other way. Those of us that have not taken active roles by volunteering in shelters or are actively engaged in this issue through working with nonprofits, you are able to turn the other head. You maybe don't look at the person who's begging in the parking lot. If you're riding or running on the rec trail, you're turning the other way. The homeless are there. They're in our neighborhood. Our job in this time, especially this time politically and socially, is to take an active role in doing what we can do to make a difference. We are looking at a unique time right now where $12.1 million has come into the coffers as of a week or two ago. So if there's a timeline here that everyone is uncomfortable with because it's being pushed forward very quickly, it's because it's not often that that amount of money is facing us to make decisions about. So thank you all for coming out. Hundreds of you, it looks like. I've counted just very briefly. You're taking the time out of your evening to tackle a subject that you may or may not be feeling comfortable with. Thank you to our council member for providing this opportunity. This is a unique time for us to come together and approach this subject from a multi-agency and a multi-city approach. And it's not a not in my backyard and I don't know about the homeless. Take time, volunteer at Gathering for Women. Take time to volunteer at the Veterans Transition Center. Get to know the homeless that are in your neighborhood. That are all us.
Thank you very, very much.
You're pushing the timer, Dave. I want to tell you right now, I'm a resident here, been here 5 years, bought a house 3 years ago with my wife. We love Seaside in California, moved here from Florida. Everybody we've met here, neighbors, just about anywhere, been great. But what I'm hearing right now up front disturbs me greatly when you start putting time limits on your citizens talking to you about their concerns. I would urge you not to gag us. I would urge you, if you want to put a time limit, do the people that don't live in this town. Tell the people, okay, if you don't live here, you got 3 minutes. If you live here, you got 10. I don't know. But this is not setting well with me. I don't know about you guys, but this just doesn't set well because we're here. I'll bet you if you ask each of these people at this table, if you want to let everybody go and talk, are any of you opposed to us talking for 3.5 minutes? This is ridiculous. The thing about homeless shelters, I don't think there's anyone here that's evil. I think it's a huge problem. I think the money is great. The location is certainly questionable at this point. As I see it, it would be great if you stayed after and had a sign-up list for any citizen that lives in this town to be on a citizen action committee. You can give them a 2-week limit if you want to come back with some answers and to get stuff going. You know, I come from a town over in Gainesville, Florida, where we had a one-stop center that you could pitch a tent to get it out of the high crime area, to get it away where people were comfortable and do services. But you're trying to target too many people. We're trying to target the people that are mentally ill, we're trying to target homeless women and their kids. You know, maybe we should be looking at a domestic violence shelter with this money. I don't know. But I just don't think we've got a really concise plan that our citizens want to support at this time. And I really don't want to see this meeting next week. You got 2.5 minutes because the line's too long. I don't want to hear that. I, as a citizen here, and I'll do everything to vote anybody out that starts gagging us. Thank you.
Just to remind you, each of you had at least 3 minutes.
Wow. Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalia Molina, and I'm on the Homeless Committee for the City of Seaside. Thank you so much for holding this today. I wanted us all to take a really deep breath because this is a hard issue. And on the eve of Valentine's Day, let's not forget to love our homeless neighbors and to have compassion. I was so happy to hear Alicia and the gentleman from Veterans Transition Center and Shonda talk about having a bit more compassion and that this could be you and these are our brothers and sisters. I had a very interesting conversation today with Michael Lissman, Deputy Director of Behavioral Health. Is he here this evening? He said he might be coming. No, that's okay. He has deep knowledge on this issue. And one of the things that I like to look at are best practices in this field. And he recommended an organization to me called Life Moves. It's a 40-year-old nonprofit organization that already has this whole wraparound system that it sounds like we're synthesizing here, and similar to what I've heard in other conversations as well. The other thing I'd like for us to consider, and I will echo this at other meetings, would be it doesn't necessarily just have to be a shelter. I mentioned the word neighbors because the homeless are our neighbors, okay? We could create a neighborhood center/shelter where we could give people financial literacy, health literacy, the skills and training for job and work so that we're not so segregated. A lot of the fear that is espoused is because we're separated. That person's on the street, that's not like me. But if you're in a class together on health literacy or financial literacy, you build friendships and relationships that people have been saying here. So I want us to consider that. Thank you again for the time and thank you for putting this together.
Mi nombre es Juana Pérez, estoy hablando en español porque vengo a representar 53% de los residentes que son Latinx. Y me parece a mí que debería de haber un intérprete para personas que no hablan inglés. Pero les quiero decir que en mis pláticas con estas gentes que son mis vecinos, más que ellos ya tienen la situación más o menos solucionada porque se agarran 2 o 3 familias y se juntan para alquilar una casa. Y lo que de veras les haría mucho beneficio es que los fondos de los programas como HEAP les asistieran en alquilar y también que les ayudaran en prevención de desalojo, porque muchos dueños pues hacen a la gente que paguen más y si tienen cualquier si tienen alguna cosa que no les parece bien, entonces el dueño solamente les dice pues ni modo, te tienes que ir y ya así se acabó. So I know you would like to know what I said, so I will translate, but I don't know if I have another 3 minutes or what. But mainly what I was saying is that I'm here as an interpreter
that there should be an interpreter. I should not have to do it. I mean, I'm not getting paid. But the reason why you don't see 53% of the residents in Seaside are Latinx, which means that why are they mostly not here? Mostly they're not here because they feel that they don't have a voice. There's no interpreter provided for them. And so mainly what I came to talk about for them is that some of the funding from the HEAP program could be used as rent assistance, because what they have figured out their own way of maneuvering with this complex situation of rents being so high. And they're actually homeless because what they have to do is get 2 or 3 families together to rent one home. And so by all definitions, if they didn't find those 2 or 3 other people, they would be homeless. So they would like to have assistance, rental assistance, and also prevention from being eviction prevention, because a lot of the owners of homes, people that are landlords, they take advantage of the situation, and if they want to get rid of somebody for whatever reason that they might have, they just hike up the rent, and the people have no way of complaining because they fear that they're going to be sent to ICE or whatever. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please provide interpreters. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this. I'm Eric Johnson. I was born in Monterey County. Actually, Billy DeBerry was my principal. Billy, it's good to see you again. It's been a long time. From Monterey High School. So, I've been a director on the Community Homeless Solutions Board for about 10 years now. We run about 4 shelters and lots of transitional housing and so on, trying to look at permanent housing solutions, but just the privilege of serving about 300 plus homeless a night in different settings, which is good. We've learned a lot, we've seen a lot, it's hard, but you know what, I'm really encouraged because we now have 150 people in this room that are all going to work towards a solution together, right? But it means everyone's got to be involved in jumping in. It's not them doing it or someone else doing it, it's us doing it. In fact, Ron Britt back there, a wonderful pastor, brother, I was going to have him come up and preach because he could say it much better voice and deeper voice, but he's a dear friend at Greater Victory Temple Church up on the hill, and they serve a great school up there where there's a lot of homeless kids actually at the school up there. So it's key partners like that in the community that really make a difference. Some of you may not know, we run a respite care home in Seaside, which houses about 6 beds for homeless people coming out of acute care stays in the hospital. Most of you probably have no idea where it is. You don't know it's there. It's quiet. But you know what? We're cutting down on readmissions, both in the emergency room and in admissions, by 67%. That's a good thing. But the issue is people are housed. And housing is critical. You got to stabilize people. You got to get them off the street. You got to take away the fear, and you know what? They really stabilize and do well, which is fun to watch and watch people grow. So if I may, I just want to say a few things. Maybe we change the name of homeless. Stop calling people homeless and call them people temporarily without shelter. Because it becomes a label, it becomes a separation. And I think we got to get away from that because they are 83%, as the stats showed, our residents locally. So let's treat them like our residents and our brothers and sisters, our people. It does provide safety and stability, but it has to be, wherever we put a shelter, it's got to be close to essential services. Just like you and I, if we don't have a car, we got to be able to get to the grocery store. We got to get to the laundry store. Obviously, if you can have services on the campus, all the better. But they've got, wherever we put this, we can't put out in the middle of Fort Ord where people don't have transportation or a grocery store, just some basic stuff. So think of the shelter that way. Third, this is an opportunity for the community to jump in and surround people. You mentioned churches and schools nearby. Why not have those churches and schools become service agencies to the homeless shelter? Churches love to serve this way. They're really good at it. They love people. So let's put it in a place and let's engage our faith community in ways that they want to serve anyway. Fourth, we've got to think about the next step. The shelter is step 2, permanent housing. And the real issue is we don't have low-cost housing that's not affordable housing that's $350,000 a unit. So we're working on tiny homes, for example, and see if we can't put a low-cost solution into some of the housing.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to cut you off because I do very much appreciate your words, but
Sure.
in order to accomplish the goal and to be fair across the
Let me
board.
just mention one word, contingent. Can you consider a shelter on a contingent basis and put some steps in place
Thank you.
to measure progress? Thanks very much.
Okay, we're going to turn it back to the leadership team as such. If any of you have heard questions that can be answered, we're going to go one by one. Then Mr. Wizard and myself will say some closing words and go from there.
Hello. So I want to talk about just two things that I heard. Well, I heard a lot, right? But the first thing I want to talk about is the comment that was heard quite often today, which was, this is a done deal. So I just want to explain to you, you can trust me or you can not trust me. Okay, it's up to you. If you've worked with me, you know I've never lied to you. If I haven't worked with you, just trust me, right? The coalition is the administrative entity for the HEAP funds, for that whole program. That means it's our response, it's my responsibility to ensure a clean process. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that as I've stepped back and I've observed this conversation throughout our continuum of care, that I think the message has kind of been stepped on a little bit, right? When I read the papers or I listen to the news, I can't tell you how many nights I've sat at home and, oh my God, if I was a member of the general public, I would walk away from that news story thinking, this is a done deal, right? Because of the way the message came across. I am not affiliated with any county government, any city government, any state government, or any federal government, okay? My job, I'm the one personally who wrote the request for proposal. I'm the one personally who wrote the application. I'm the one personally responsible for ensuring a fair and equitable process. We did a 6-week community engagement process. I have been through, I swear to God, I think every city, in that time frame, having meetings about HEAP where interpretation was provided, because I do believe that is key as well, right, to make sure voices are heard from everywhere. And I had to say the same message over and over, because at every single meeting, someone came up to me and said, hey, I've heard this is a done deal. And I've had to say, whatever you've heard, right, I'm telling you, I'm the one responsible, okay? The state of California is looking to us to ensure that this process is clean, transparent, and equitable. And I promise you, that will happen, right? So there is no done deal anywhere. But I can understand where some of you might think that, because of the way the message got stepped on some places. This could be complicated. So I just ask you, trust me, right? If you want to see what those reports look like about all those community engagement, go to the Coalition of Homeless Services Providers website. They're all right there. All the final reports are there for you to read. If you want to look at the request for proposals, it's right there. You want to look at the application? It's right there. We have been transparent in our role from the beginning, and will continue to do so. We are committed to doing that. And let me tell you, it's not as easy as it sounds, right? That's why you'll never hear me weighing in one way or another on any particular project, because that's not my role. My role is the process and the monitoring once projects are selected. The other thing I just want to say, only because I just happened to be there, right? Not because I was intricately involved, but when I heard the conversation about the emergency shelter overlay area, every city had to do that, and I just so happened to be in the City of Seaside City Council and other city council chambers when those conversations happened. So those were public. I mean, it seemed like there was a good amount of outreach to do that. So those conversations were not hidden in any way, shape, or form. I just say that because I sat there, I can't tell you how many times, watching the process. So unless you have questions for me, I'll stop there. But again, please, I ask you, if you can extend yourself just to trust me, I promise you, the process regarding the HEAP monies, project selection, and monitoring to ensure outcomes is in safe hands, I promise.
Thank you. Mr. Wizard?
Thank you, Councilmember Pacheco. And I just want to echo partially what Ms. Turney said about the process. And we heard a little bit tonight about, well, let me take a step back. There is no MOU. There is no memorandum. There is no understanding. We have not committed the City of Seaside to anything, and the county's not committed anything to us. Solely, we have said to each other, hey, what do you think about this idea? That's the end of what we've said to each other. And I've taken notes throughout this meeting. I know the city manager's taken notes, and at the city council meeting on the 21st, we're going to share that information with whoever shows up at the meeting and for the edification of the entire council to make an informed decision. Because tonight is for us to hear your input, to share with the entire group, and when it's televised on Channel 25, and when the entire city knows that there's a regularly scheduled meeting and there's no funny business, they didn't try to hide anything. Everybody can predict when our next meeting is. It's every first and third Thursday. We'll share this information at the regularly scheduled time. But I wanted to point out one phrase I heard was it related to the selection of the site. And what I wanted to say was, just to give you some greater understanding about it, is that the county owns that site. There's a county-owned parcel, and the City of Seaside does not control it. The City of Seaside does not tell the county what to do. And if the county decides to enter into an MOU, enter into an agreement of understanding with a third-party service provider, that is the county's business, and the city does not tell the county yes or no anything. We can tell them that we want to be a partner. We can tell them that we don't want to be a partner. We can tell them we don't like what they're doing. But it is not our land, and it is not our decision.
Mr. City Manager?
Thank you. I took notes as well. Thank you to the 32 speakers who shared your concerns and questions and comments. I took notes as best I could, and they will be conveyed in some manner to the council as the council meets on the topic next Thursday. In general, there were questions and concerns about process, location, and operations. And others have spoke about where we're at in the process. I wanted to be very exact about where we were in the process, which is why I read the letter, didn't embellish the letter, that the city council actually debated and discussed at the January 17th meeting and tweaked up a little bit. So that happened out in public view. And the letter went to the chairman of the county board. And I also wanted to read the letter from Community Human Services and Gathering for Women. Again, so it's, I'm not making anything up. I received this on Monday. It was unsolicited, and it was provided to the council. And the council, I expect, will try to understand this proposal a little bit better. And I presume the Gathering for Women will, I know that they're here because they spoke, and they will try to understand questions and concerns and maybe add more detail to this. Because one of the ways that you know that it's not a done deal is when you ask questions about operations, and we look like, we don't know, because we don't. Because there's multiple homeless populations with widely varying needs. And all that happened was the state created the opportunity for some money that localities could have, and the county clearly have a person's temporarily without shelter problem, and the county has a parcel that they owned and we're not using, and asked if maybe there could be a shelter there. That's all that has happened. The Gathering for Women understood that, had their own conversation with the county. So the location is a location of opportunity. Whether you view that opportunity positively or negatively depends on your viewpoint. But what will happen next is, I'm sure there'll be conversations after the meeting officially disengaged. What I mean by conversations is you all can talk to anyone else in the room. I can assure you, the one thing that won't happen is 3 of my bosses won't be talking to each other about this unless and until it's at next Thursday's council meeting when you can all watch that occur. That's what's going to happen. So this idea will come before the Seaside City Council next Thursday at 7 o'clock. And I recommend you get there early if you want to get seated.
Just a couple of comments based on what I heard as well. And I neglected to introduce Anastasia Wyatt, who's the county's housing program manager, who's here. Because several speakers spoke about the connection between homeless issues and the lack of available housing in general. And that's something that we're taking a very close look at, and we're going to be working on in conjunction with the cities over the course of the next year and on into the future. One of the speakers, or several speakers actually, spoke about the need for employment training or job training as part of a shelter. And we are looking at for example, the shelter in Salinas that we're working on together with the city of Salinas. We're talking about bringing our workforce training staff to that site to provide job training for people who are unable to get employment and need job training. The last thing I would like to offer is we would be glad to organize a tour of the warming shelter that we operate currently in Salinas, which is essentially right across the street from the County Government Center. We would need to do it in some kind of a structured way. And what I would ask is if you're interested, contact me through the county website, and I'd be glad to work with the operator of that shelter and take anyone who's interested to see how it's operated through that facility. So be glad to do that if you need to. Thank you.
I think me and Mr. Wizard are going to say a few words and thoughts, at least I am, so that way you know where I'm coming from. Just a brief little story. Way back when I used to work for the center, 5-7 years ago, there was a homeless volunteer that was here every day. And we used to work with him. He was here, he was clean, well dressed, etc. And one day, he wasn't here for 3 days. So we said, well, let's go see if we can find him. Well, I did find him. He was in his car and he was dead. So I have a deep concern about the homeless. But in this process, if I would not have done this process, and I cannot speak for Mr. Wizard, the easiest thing to do is say, hey, there's a need, let's see if we can help. Nobody would have known, nobody would have come to a council meeting, and that's a simple answer, because a lot of you have said you weren't aware of the process. John Wizard and myself said, we need to hear from the residents. We need to promote it and reach out. We need to do maximized effort so that way the community has a voice. I have evolved from 3 weeks ago till tonight, and I will evolve some more prior time to decision, 7 o'clock, February 21st, in this process. No decisions have been made. John and I have not discussed this as far as the direction we want to go. We've only discussed how to organize, promote, plan, and hear you. That is the only process that we have accomplished. We heard 150 people, 60, whatever, were here tonight. I want to congratulate you on your respect for one another, the way you listen to one another, the way you've hopefully gained some insight from different perspectives. And now we can move forward until February 21 at 7 o'clock. So we can hear some more comments, so all of us can make an intelligent decision that we believe is best interest from the, and from my perspective, it will be coming from the voices of the community. That's our job, especially when many of you live there or are part of it or the past history of it. This is your home, this is your town, this is my home for 65 years. So, and I remember the pit. And I remember walking up that street, and I remember playing basketball with a lot of the guys that were part of the pit. So I just want to say your comments were well appreciated. The leadership team of Supervisor Parker, Sherry Hasty, and countless others to be here showcases that you care, showcases that you want to make a difference, and hopefully it showcase some way or other we need to find some answers. Because if you drive up and down Fremont or into the Canyondale area or Sand City area or Monterey Beach or Carmel or wherever, we can't hide from the problem. I'm not saying that is a solution. I'm just saying we got to look with open eyes, with a heavy heart, and see if we can find opportunities, whatever they be, wherever they are. And I think tonight you heard other opportunities beyond just that site, moving facility, the marina site. Monterey has some ideas. And the coalition is the answer team. They will be developing a subcommittee that will make recommendations. If we turn in the best, if we did, which I have no clue, turn in the best application, it could be denied. This is far, far, far from over, and this is a rush to making a decision. And your input tonight made a huge difference to me, and I believe Mr. Wizard, in how we move this thing forward. Thank you so very much. Mr. Wizard has some wise words to say to conclude this meeting.
How wise I'll be, but I'm thankful. Maybe I just wanted to say thank you everybody for participating. I think it's been a long time since we had a packed room on any issue, and certainly there's been a couple of things as of late that have really gotten the community engaged, and I'm really thankful that so many people are contributing to the management and care of the city, and it really speaks volumes about how we see each other as a community and that we all need to be involved. So thank you very much for being here this evening, even up here Wednesday night. And if you're not able to attend Thursday the 21st at 7 p.m., you can call, email, tweet, DM, message, whatever. Please submit some comment and then watch on TV to make sure that we are accountable and that we identify the things that you've raised as concerns. So the more you can participate, the better. So thank you for being here tonight, and please come on Thursday.
Thank you and good night.